In today's Rambam, we begin Hilchas Shemittah v'Yevel. And in the Hilchas Shemittah v'Yevel, right in the beginning, Sevav sich in the Egen, a very important diuk, and Shakla V'Tarya in Rambam. The Rambam starts Hilchas Shemittah v'Yevel, Yesh B'chlolon Shtayim v'Esrem Mitzvahs. 22 mitzvahs, Teisha mitzvahs aseh, Shlish Esrem mitzvahs leisaseh. 9 mitzvahs aseh and 13 leisaseh. V'zeo pratam, Aleph. Shatishbeis ha'oretz mimelachta b'shvius, that the land should be shavis, should rest from malacha and shvius. That's the asik. Beis shaliyavid avidus oretz b'shanazu, gimel shaliyavid avidus ilam b'shanazu, dalu shaliyiktzir asfiach keneged ha'ketzrim, hey shaliyivtzir ha'nizirim keneged ha'beitzrim. So he starts with the mitzvah saseh, and then it goes with the number of the mitzvah lists. But there's a very strong distinction between how he says the mitzvah saseh and how he says the lists. The mitzvah saseh, he says that the oretz shetish beis ha'oretz mimelachta b'shvius. It's a mitzvah that the ground should be shavis. He doesn't say that a person should be shavis mimeleches ha'oretz, that a person should be shavis from working. He says the ground has to be shavis. See, that's the mitzvah saseh. When it comes to the leisaseh, he doesn't say that the ground shouldn't be worked or that the trees shouldn't be worked. There he talks about the person. Shalayavid avedus ha'oretz, shalayavid avedus elon, shalayiktzir asfiach, shalayivtzir ha'nezirim. So when it comes to the assay, he says the assay is that the ground should be shavis, not putting it on the person's shoulders, but that it's obviously the ground is it doesn't have mitzvahs, but that the mitzvah, the person is that the ground should be shavis. And the Gabi, the Yisurim, he says that the Yisur is that the person shouldn't do and the person shouldn't be ketzer and so on and so forth. That's how the Rambam says it over here. And from them is Memedayik, the Achreinim, and there's a whole diuk that there's a special mitzvah by Shemittah that's al hakarka. We'll see soon enough Kamina Bedova. That's what he says in the minyan mitzvahs right on top, in the Keseris, in the beginning of the halachas. On the other hand, when he starts the first halacha in the actual Rambam, halacha aleph, mitzvahs asay lishbeis b'shona shvius me'avedas ha'oretz v'avedas ha'elonis. There's a mitzvah asay to be shavis b'shona shvius from working the ground and working the trees. Shenemar v'shovsa ha'oretz shabbos lahashem. The pasuk says that the ground should be shavis. V'nemar b'chorish b'kosir tishbeis, they should be shavis from chorish and kotz. Here already the Rambam says mitzvah say on the person. Mitzvah say lishbeis b'shona shvius me'avedas ha'oretz. Very different. In the beginning, in the minyan, he said shatish beis ha'oretz mimelachta. And here he's saying mitzvah saseh lishbeis me'avedas ha'oretz. The person should be shavis. So the shaila is, what's the pshat in Rambam? What's the Chayr is giving us here two approaches, two mahalchim. The emphasis, if you look in the minyan ha-mitzvahs, that's before the Sefer Hayad, that we read before the Sefer Hayad, Kuf Lamed Hey, Lishbeis mi'avedas ha'oretz, Shneimar b'chorish b'kosir tishbeis. Like the Rambam said in the Pnim of the halacha, that it's a tziva on the person to be shavis mi'avedas ha'oretz. And that's also his lashon in Sefer HaMitzvahs, Mitzvah Kuf Lamed Hey, Shetzivonu lishbeis me'avedas ha'oretz b'shona shvius. Al Kalpanas, we have sign the Sefer HaMitzvahs in the beginning of the Sefer, sign the minyan HaMitzvahs in the beginning of the Sefer, and sign in the beginning of the halacha aleph of the Rambam, that in all these halachas he says the mitzvah saseh is that the person should be shavis, the person should rest from working the land. The Yetzim and Aklal is in the minyan HaMitzvahs right in the beginning, in the kesaras of the halacha, where there, the aleph, the first mitzvah is shatish beis ha'oretz mimelachta b'shvius, kilu, it's a mitzvah on the ground to be shavis mimelach. What's the nafkimina between these two ways? What's the nafkimina lahalacha if it's a mitzvah on the person to rest from working, or if the mitzvah is that the ground should rest that year? Zagen shen asach. The nafkimina is if you have a goy do work for you. Comes to Shabbos l'moshel. The mitzvah is a person shouldn't work on Shabbos. If a goy does malacha for you on Shabbos, so it's also midrabanon. It's a shvus, fashion nezachem, or other inyan. We'll see maybe soon. But for sure, there's no mitzvah deraisa. No mitzvah deraisa. If a yid asks a goy to do for him malacha on Shabbos, for sure, it's not ever a deraisa. It's a shvus. A middle of nochri shvus. So the shaila is what's legabe Shemittah. If you have a goy working your ground on Shemittah, so if the mitzvah is that the Odom should be Shevis, like the Lashon in the Halacha mitzvahs, I say Lishbeis, and the Lashon I say Frem mitzvahs. So it's a mitzvah on the person to be Shevis. If a guy is doing it, so you're still being Shevis. Now, maybe it's a Shvus. However, if it's like the Rambam says in the beginning, Shetish Beis Ha'oretz Memelachto, that the Chiv and the Yid is to see to it, that the ground is Shevis Memelachto. So then what's the difference? Who does it? What's the difference if the guy does it? As long as a Yid is arranging, or it's in the Yid's field that a guy is doing it, the Rebbe brings in a Sikha and Bahar and Chelik Zayin, these two drachim, these two tzdodim with the nafkimina. The Rebbe is not machriya in the shaila, but he says an interesting thing in one of the orders. He says v'yesh leimar that these two weifanim are tolui b'hatayimim lemitzvah shmita. It's dependent on what's the reason for the mitzvah shmita. If it's the reason what the Rambam says mer nevuchim shateisi ha'oretz tvuosa v'tischazek be'omdo shmuta, that it's a mitzvah so that the ground should be better. The ground should do better by the fact that when it stays empty or fallow. So then it's a mitzvah on the ground. Should be sasoretz. However, if it's l'kveya b'libeinu in yichidush ha'elam, kishesh yom masachulu, if it's all that a yid should remember that the Eibush was shavis by my separation, so maybe a yid should be keveya that by him being shavis 1 year, or as it brings from Ein Davar, that a yid should remember that everything is b'rshus adin kel from the chinuch, from the Ramban, Barbanel. So then it's a mitzvah on the person. But it says that that would be the Yised and Svarah for the two drachim. Is it a mitzvah that's negia that the land should be shavis because it's a tevas ha'oretz to be 1 year rest, or is it tevas ha'odom? That would be the Yised that ever says yesh leimar in these two mahal. So what's the inyan? So it's a breiter inyan, and a lot of svarim are written on it, and I don't know so much to say on it, but a little bit. So the Minchas Chinuch in Kama Mekemes holds very strongly that the mitzvah of Shemittah is like the Lashon in the beginning, and the mitzvah over here, Shetish Beis Ha'oretz Memelachto. It's a mitzvah on the Oretz. He's very, very strong. The Shemittah is very different than Shabbos, and that it's a mitzvah that the Oretz should be Shabbos, not that the person should be Shabbos. And he says in Mitzvah Kuf Yud Beis, he's Meirich, he says Adavar Borur, he says not a Sofek, and that's the Lashon HaPosuk, that V'shav Soha Oretz Shabbos Lashem. It's a mitzvah on Shvis HaSor. It's a melataki. It's also for a guy to do malacha for a yid on Shvis. It's a deiraisa. Anytime is that it's a Gemara before Rashas. I'm not going to go into the Gemara. Gemara Navi Dezara Daf Tesvav, and he says it's a Gemara before Rashas. And there's a Tesis read over there that others are mefarish that way as well. Others say not. That's his shita. Later in Mitzvah Reish Tzadik Ches, he again talks about it, and he says, "I said this bechiburi kama po'omim." That this is a basic difference between the mitzvah of Shvisa of Shabbos and Shvisa of Shemitah. The Shvisa of Shabbos is that the Odom should be Shabbos, and Shvisa of Shemitah is that the ground should be Shabbos. And there in Reish Tzadik Ches, he says another Gevaldik in Nafkamina. He says, if a person puts a zera into the ground, Erev Shabbos, an hour before Shabbos, or 3 hours, whatever, a few hours before Shabbos. And then, but you just put it in the ground, it takes time till it's niklat. So it's not niklat until on Shabbos. So it's a davar aposhet that you're not over the Yisur of Shabbos for us because your melacha you did Erev Shabbos. On Shabbos you're being Shabbos. The ground is working on Shabbos because on Shabbos is when the klita happens, but that doesn't matter because on Shabbos the Indian is that the Odom should be Shabbos. So as long as you do something on Friday, so the manif community is happening on Shabbos. And it's halachim mefreshes lagabi kelim that anything that you do before Shabbos can go on Shabbos and can happen on Shabbos because you're being Shabbos. Says the Minchas Chinuch, aber bei Shemittah darf it din sein anders. Says by Shemittah, if a person plans in the beginning Erev Shemittah, and that zera is being nizra niklat, it becomes niklat and Shemittah, so then you're over the Yisur Deraisa. As he's actually over Yisur Deraisa because the vart is v'shav soha Oretz Shabbos Lashem. If the Oretz on Shabbos Lashem and Shemittah is doing the klita, then you are over Yisur Deraisa, even though your peula was done Erev Shemittah. And as he's talking to take it God. And he says that he doesn't see that the Rambam says this. He says he doesn't find him a foolish, but he holds it's davar barur, and he says all types of lashenas because he holds that it's pashut that that's the emes. That Shemita is a din that the karka has to be shavis. And just like the mincha, and there's mekayris for this. There's a marshal they bring chachma sleiman and the mitzvah of tzaddik, and also in the Mari Perlov on his sefer on the mitzvahs of the Rasag. So he's also Meirich in the Sinyan, Mitzvah Samachalef, Meirich Kedarke, and he also holds very strongly, like the Minchas Chinuch, very strongly, that the mitzvah of Shemitah is that the karka should be Shabbos. And he says, the same nafkaminas as the Minchas Chinuch. He says that if a goy does Aveda for you in Shemita, it's an Isur Deraisa. And he also says that if you plant on Erev Shemita and it goes into Shemita and in Shemita then it's Niklat, so that's the Indian that the Karka is not Shev, it's an Isur Deraisa. Interestingly, he says, if you plant at the end of Shemita and it's Niklat after Shemita, so you're talking not Aver V'Shav Sa'ar as Shabbos Lashem, because on Shabbos it didn't work. But you're Aver the Isurim, the Lavim, that says Sod Cholois Izra. They're stuck on the person, as we said earlier. The lavin of Shemitah are definitely on the person. That you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this. So maybe if you planted Erev Rosh Hashanah at the end of Shemitah, so he says you're not aver the asay of V'shav Sa'aretz Shabbos Lashem, because the Oretz is not doing the work till after Shemitah. But you're aver the late asay of Sad Cholei Sizra, that's on the Adam. You did an Aveda Pula of Zriya before the end of Shemitah. But Al Kapanim, he definitely holds, just like the Minchas Chinuch, that the gather of the Easter is V'shav Sa'aretz Shabbos Lashem. He also has another nafkim, an interesting thing. He says, if the word is V'shav Sa'aretz Shabbos Lashem, so let's say there's a guy who's doing work in your Sada Balkarchacha, a guy, a Yid, someone who's doing work in your Sada Balkarchacha. So your Sada is not being Shavis because it's working. So then there's no problem if you do work there also. Mitzad V'shav Sa'aretz Shabbos Lashem. Again, Mitzad the Lavim, it's still a problem. But Mitzad V'shav Sa'aretz Shabbos Lashem, yes, that your land is not being Shavis because someone is doing Malach over there. He brings a makir, if he's a shutef, he brings a makir from different halacha, from a rivosh. But he says, if the ground is not being shavis, then it's really not being shavis. So if you also do work over there, so you wouldn't be aver the Easter of Shav Sa'aretz Shabbos Lashem. As they zog, they're Mari Perlov, the Hemshich Dvorov. So these are the two shittas. They hold very strongly that the gather of the mitzvah say of Shemita is not that the person should be shavis, but V'shav Sa'aretz that the ground should be shavis. And like we said, that's Sakim Meduyik in the first mitzvah that the Rambam says right in the beginning of the halachas. Shatish b'sa'aretz b'malachta b'shvis. However, on the other hand, the Rambam Alein in the halachas starts off mitzvah. So say lish bis b'shana shvis, a mitzvah on the person. So the Mari Perlov Tak is very bothered by this Rambam. He doesn't understand. He says he doesn't understand. How is it that the Rambam first says one thing, which he holds is right? The Mari Perlov holds very strongly that actually it's a mitzvah of Shav Sa'aretz, but then the Rambam himself turns around and says differently to Lashon. He says Taki the Smag, who typically goes to Lashon Rambam, Taki says here differently. He doesn't say like the Lashon of the Rambam, the halacha, that the mitzvah is that the person should be shavis b'shana shvis. He changes it to Yish b'sa'aretz. But the Chinuch, on the other hand, he says like the Rambam, that it's a mitzvah on the person. Mele bleibt by Akasha. Like I said, the Rebbe brings in the Sikha both Lashenis, side the Lashon of the Rambam and the Halacha, side in the mitzvahs, side in Sefer HaMitzvahs. And the Rebbe says there's two ways to learn. With an Afkemina, but the Rebbe is not Machriya either. But in the Rambam, it's L'chura. L'chura, it's hard to learn in the Halacha of the Rambam, that the Rambam learns that it's a mitzvah on the Karka. In the actual Halacha. And like I said, it's also in Sefer HaMitzvahs, and also in the mitzvahs in the beginning of the Sefer. So really, if we have here four Mekeres in Rambam, only one of them, which is the mitzvah before the halachas, does the Rambam say shetish b'sa'aretz min malach. But in the other three places, he says some mitzvah la'adam. And like I said, also the halachas that they say that mashal that if a goy does the Aveda is deraisa, the Rambam doesn't say it. The Minchas Chinuch Taka says leimatzasi that the Rambam should say it. So the other meaning that if you do the zriya before Shemita and the klita happens on Shemita, you're aver deraisa. Dachzich that in Rambam is not mefurish such a halacha. So what's going to say? Pshatake. On the other one hand, the Rambam does say the lashon shetish ba'aretz mimalachta. On the other hand, he keeps on saying that the mitzvah is on the person to be shavis. Basically, aber sagen mir avart. Once avart das kann er helfen. Give him a little bit of mahalach in the senior. Perhaps can sein as maybe there's a middle dark. In other words, the two dargas it's a chiv on the person to rest, or is a chiv on the karka to rest. It's other. Maybe there's a darga somewhere in between. Das heißt, the taking the kavanas advorim is that the ground, that the pool the ground shouldn't be worked, but that mitzvah is that that therefore the person should rest from doing the work. Let me explain. I'll give you a dogma from a different halach. There is Shabbos. So Shabbos, everyone, a middle of Nochri Shabbos. If a Yid asks a goy to do a malacha on Shabbos, it's for sure not an Yisur Deraisa, because then it's a Yisur on the Yid. A Yid is not allowed to do malacha on Shabbos, not a goy. So Midiraisa, if a goy does the malacha, there's no Yisur. Fretzich the Shaila, The peula that the goy did, is that a malacha asura b'chlal, or it's nothing? There's an issur for a yid to do malacha on Shabbos, and if a goy does it, it's nothing. So it's an interesting thing. The some sefer says, and a few is in his shuvas, he says by Shabbos a yid can't ask a goy to do malacha on Shabbos because it says a shvus memtzei chefza. Why doesn't it say because shlichus? There's a of yesh shlichus l'nochri l'chumra. That a goy taki is not doing shlichus by a goy midiraisa atom kamatem, but l'chumra brings sich yesh shlichus l'nochri l'chumra midrabon halkapan. So why doesn't it say? Some sefer says that you're not going to have a goy do from malacha on Shabbos mitzad halach of shlichus l'chumra. Zok some sefer it's not shaykh shlichus by Shabbos. It's not shaykh the whole verse. Because since the gather of Yisur Shabbos is on the person that he should be Shavis, so what's that shlichus? If he's doing something b'shlichusi, I'm still being Shavis. The calling Yoni of Shabbos is on the Gavra, and after the Gavra that he should be Shavis, vayonach bein mashri, that he should be Shavis. So the union of shlichus as Yener Tepeston, Ritach Nishon in my Shvisa. So Mil is not shaykh the union of shlichus. As he said, some sefer, so there's a few places I don't have here them are mokim right now. Aber sie do that the Rebbe though in Simen Reish Mem Gimel Shulchan Aruch when he talks about the Isur of Amidul Anochri of Shabbos bringt as one of the reasons for the Isur Amidul Anochri is talking because of Shlichus. As yesh Shlichus Lanochri Lechumre Midrabanon Mit Shemitain as the Sahagos Maiminus that says it that there is a din of Shlichus. Das heißt nicht wie the Chum Sefer. Chum Sefer said it's not Shaykh Shlichus because the whole din of Shabbos is after the Gavra. So Mela, was says shlichus, he's being shavis. But the Rebbe sagt, that's yeah, don't shlichus. Sagt Ben, Rabbi Zeven writes about it in the Sefer later Halacha, that the Rebbe holds that Shabbos is not just on the person to be shavis. The malachis are malachis asuris betzim. That's why I can't do it. I can't do it because this is a malacha asura. Azeich bringt, Rabbi Yosef Engels brings it in the Sefer Asvan Deiraisa, when he talks about that there are those who say that the whole all Isurim Zmanim are only Isuri Gavra, not Isuri Cheftza, like Isuri Shabbos, they bring a Mokir, Yerushalmi, that Isuri Gavra, Shabbos only Isuri Gavra, not Isuri Cheftza, but Rabbi Yosef Engels says that in Talmud Bavli straight to Anders, because in Talmud Bavli talks about a Neir, Shalei Shovas Mimlocha b'Shabbos, which means the Neir that was lit by a Goy on Shabbos, you can't use it for Avdollah. If the Holy Service Shabbos is after the Gavra on the person, so a goy lit a candle. What Avera was done? A goy doesn't have a Suvin Shabbos. A Yid is Suvin Shabbos. A goy lit a candle. What's Shavas Mimlocha Asura b'Shabbos? Al Korchoch, that lighting a candle is that's a Mimlocha Asura b'Shabbos. Not just that I'm not allowed to light, a Yid is not allowed to candle. Lighting candles is also of Shabbos. Nor have them in his Chal der Yisur of a Yid. But if a goy does it, so a malacha asura was done, but what's going to done? It's right. Zekman do from Shabbos. Late with Alter Rebbe says, late with Rabbi says that we have here. So Michad Gisa Shabbos is that the person should be Shabbos, but we're learning over here that it's not just the person with Shabbos and anything else is not negated. Not negated to me. These malachas are osur on Shabbos. There are malacha asura even when a goy does it. Nervous and who is chal b'chiyav on a yid. So if a goy does it for the yid, it's not an issue deraisa because the chiv is chal l'pei lafim yid. Beifen, to be clear over here, we're saying that there's three dargis. There is the darge like the Minchas Chinuch said and Mari Perlov and those who learn that way by Shemittah that the Easter is on the karkas, don't do the person. So maybe if a goy does it, it's also an issue deraisa. If a goy does it at the karka of a yid or for the yid, sechat an issue deraisa. That's their shit. There is another ifin that there's an issa there's only a karka after the gavra. So garner satan mekin shulach. You're not allowed to do something. You have to be shayfet. A yid has to be shayfet. That would be like Shabbos, ladasach some sefer. With those who learn the Shabbos is only a karka after the gavra. And then we have in the middle that the malacha itself is a malacha asura. So isur cheftza. It's a malacha asura. Now there was tarnished under malacha asura is a sayyid. So maybe if a yid has a goy do it. So goes it's takam locha asura, but lapel mamash the yid is not even midei raisa in this. Can after zayin this middle derech would be a little tivuch and das Rambam. On the one hand, the Rambam says shetish b'yisaris mumlachta b'shvius that you should know that Shemita is not just on the gavra that a yid has to rest on shvius. That's it. But if a guy will do malacha, it's no problem because the only thing is a yid can't do malacha. Can't have the Rambam will sagen name. The Eibishter wanted that the karka should be shavis. The kavanah was v'shavsa oretz Shabbos Lashem. Aber die bald as the Eibishter got the kavanah v'shavsa oretz Shabbos Lashem is a them in his chal der chiyuv von shavis sein, and who is chal that chiyuv and a mitzvah and a person not doing avodah. So therefore, if a yitak has a goy do it, it wouldn't be an Isser Derais. Not like the Minchas Chinuch, not like the Mary Perlov. And like in the Rambam L'chura, there's no such thing. Because the Poel Mamish, the Isser are after the Isser L'Poel, even though the Kavanas Isser is that the ground should be Shavis, but it's through a Yid being Shavis. And if a goy is doing it, so that's not the Yiddish mitzvah, that's not the Yiddish chiyuv. Massive one last word. I said before from Mary Perlov, if you learn that it's a chiyuv that the karka should be shavis, so then if the karka is already not being shavis, then the chiyuv is in this battle because the karka is not being shavis. So I'm thinking, Vishav Saras Shabbos Hashem means the whole Eretz Yisrael should be shavis. So Al Korchach, there's one guy somewhere doing avodah in Eretz Yisrael. So how could it be? How could it be that the gather Yisrael is that the whole Eretz Yisrael should be shavis? And if one person is breaking that, so Sheshem Yishdah, nobody's been kind to Yisrael anymore. Could be that's an additional sniff where the Rambam Taka learned that even though the Kavanas HaMitzvah is V'shav Sa'aretz, aber the way this mitzvah is set up l'peil is by the Chiv, the Schal and the Yid, B'chorish, B'kotzer Tishbeis, to be shavis and not to do malach in the camp.